Librero.com presents The Air Power of D-Day. Over 80 years ago, on June 6, 1944, the Allies orchestrated a bold attack on the German-occupied beaches and areas surrounding Normandy, France, to begin their liberation campaign in Europe. This assault is well known for its brutal beachhead firefights and loss of life, but what is less talked about is how the Allies employed air power on that fateful day. Hi, my name is Ren, and I am one of the librarians here at Librero. Today I will be talking about D-Day and the specific role played by aviation for that world-changing event. Unlike modern warfare, where we have become accustomed to seeing air assets used to soften target defenses prior to placing soldiers in harm's way, the assault on the beaches of Normandy was approached with a different strategy. Instead, Allied leadership chose to implement a troop-driven ground attack originating from the sea and air. This tactic was selected to counter German intelligence, fearing that they would recognize and subsequently subvert any aerial attack. The planners of D-Day, which is often referred to as Operation Overlord, instead chose a strategy of deception, surprise, and sheer numbers over conventional air assault. But it would be false to assume that aviation did not play a significant role in Operation Overlord. In fact, it was critical for deception, disguise, and troop and equipment deployment. There were many component operations and missions leading up to D-Day as well as on the day itself. Let's take a look at some of the key aircraft and air assets involved. British aircraft used in Operation Overlord included the Vickers Wellington, a long-range medium bomber serving as part of Operation Fortitude, the Bristol Blenheim, also a long-range medium bomber serving as part of Operation Fortitude, the Short Stirling, a heavy bomber functioning as a tug and troop transport with functions in Operations Glimmer, Titanic, Tonga, and Mallard, the Handley Page Halifax, a heavy bomber functioning as a tug and troop transport responsible for missions in Operation Tonga, the Armstrong Whitworth Albemarle, a cargo transport tug responsible for missions in Operation Tonga, the Airspeed Horsa glider, carrying paratroopers and equipment for Operations Tonga, Mallard, Keokuk, and Elmira. And finally, the Hamilcar, a heavy glider responsible for carrying troops, personnel, and heavy equipment for Operations Tonga and Mallard. Next, we'll take a quick look at the American aircraft used in Operation Overlord. They included the B-26 Marauder, a medium bomber serving in Operation Smokescreen, the C-47 Skytrain, also known as the Douglas Dakota, a cargo transport tug serving as both a transport and a tug carrying paratroopers and equipment in Operations Albany, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Keokuk, and Elmira. And finally, we have the Waco CG-4 glider, responsible for carrying troops and equipment in Operations Chicago, Detroit, and Elmira. You can learn more about these aircraft and explore details and timelines at Librero.com. One of the first aircraft-related roles for D-Day wasn't dogfighting or bombing, but rather through media deception. Operation Fortitude was an effort involving double agents, as well as false bases, tanks, and aircraft. Technicians from a British film production team, led by Norman Loudon, created 50 dummy Vickers Wellington aircraft and 100 Bristol Blenheim aircraft to give the appearance of a larger force of both reconnaissance aircraft as well as for film production. These dummy aircraft were strategically placed in locations meant to distract and confuse the German reconnaissance teams from recognizing the attack on Normandy. How effective were they? Well, even in the early hours of the actual assault, Hitler believed the attack to be a distraction from another target. In addition to Operation Fortitude, there were 3 other notable aircraft-involved deception operations that took place. Operation Glimmer was a mission where short Stirling bombers dropped thousands of metal strips, known as chaff, to confuse German radar. This mission occurred during the overnight hours of June 5th into June 6th. During the early morning hours of D-Day, Operation Titanic consisted of the dropping of dummy paratroopers by short Stirling bombers near St. Lo to draw German defensive measures away from the Normandy target. These fake paratroopers, named Rupert, were equipped with broadcast gunfire sounds and self-destruct capabilities. Finally, the last of the notable deception missions involving aviation was Operation Smokescreen. Smokescreens were minimally used during D-Day to protect soldiers on the beaches due to weather and immense logistical issues. However, B-26 aircraft of the Royal Air Force 8th and 342nd Squadrons did deploy some smokescreens to conceal the incoming Allied armada. Originally planned for June 5th, but delayed due to bad weather, various aircraft were involved in 8 primary operations of the actual attack on Normandy. Airborne operations were used to place troops and equipment in strategic locations to seize Nazi-controlled resources, including bridges and causeways, and to provide support to troops arriving by sea. Consisting of the British 6th Airborne Division, Operation Tonga was the first British-led D-Day airborne operation to occur. In order to secure their left flank during the Normandy landing against a possible German counterattack, the Allies decided to engage an airborne division on the eastern shore of the River Orne to hold the ground pending the amphibious offense. The first missions of Operation Tonga, occurring just after midnight on June 6th, involved the capture and control of several bridges over the Orne River. British Halifax bombers and Horsa gliders were used to accomplish these missions. Shortly thereafter, at approximately 25 minutes after midnight, the Armstrong-Whitworth-Albemarle was used to carry paratroopers assigned to mark 3 targeted drop zones, zones N, K, and V, for paratroopers. These paratroopers experienced a wide variety of incredibly difficult conditions, including incorrect landing zones, weather, and aircraft failures. Several paratroopers landed in marshes that were only about 3 meters deep, but drowned due to the heavy equipment and packs attached to their backs. Over 150 American Douglas Dakotas, or C-47 Skytrains, and British short Stirlings towed Horsa gliders with multiple waves of paratroopers and equipment to the drop zones. All of this occurred within approximately the first hour of June 6th. Operation Tonga also entailed the delivery of equipment and men for an anti-tank battery and the divisional headquarters. Douglas Dakotas and short Stirlings towed 65 Horsa and 4 Hamilcar gliders to carry the heavy equipment loads at around 3:20 a.m. on June 6th. The last mission for Operation Tonga included 3 Horsa gliders carrying sappers, or combat engineers, and soldiers from the 9th Parachute Battalion who were assigned to land and destroy the German Merville Battery at around 4:30 a.m. The initial American missions, occurring simultaneously with Operation Tonga, were divided into 2 operations, Albany and Boston. These missions were similar to Operation Tonga, however they involved different drop zones and targets. Operation Albany was the first American mission for D-Day. It was the troop transport mission of the 101st Airborne Division led by General Taylor. It aimed at capturing several key points during the night of June 5th through 6th to ensure the success of the amphibious operations on Utah Beach. Over 150 Douglas Dakotas were used to carry paratroopers to drop zones A, C, and D. These regiments were responsible for seizing causeways leading into Utah Beach. Many accounts by the 101st Airborne Reservists describe horrific conditions and experiences. Most commonly, however, was the shock experienced upon parachute deployment where weapons, equipment, and gear were torn off. One account from Gordon Walthall described, "When my chute popped open, I thought I was torn in half. I felt a wrench at my leg. When I looked down, my leg pack was gone. All I could see were tracers racing from every corner of every hedgerow and the boom of mortars and 88s on the field below. Some men narrowly missed being hit by their own planes and comrades." Operation Boston was an additional American airborne mission for D-Day. It was the troop transport mission of the 82nd Airborne Division, commanded by General Ridgway. Like Operation Albany, its aim was to enable U.S. paratroopers to capture several key points during the night of June 5th and 6th, 1944, to ensure the success of the amphibious operations on Utah Beach on D-Day. Over 200 Douglas Dakotas were utilized to deploy paratroopers to drop zones N, O, and T. These missions were to seize bridges and small towns around Utah Beach. Ed Bocafogli described his experience. "I fell out. I slipped on vomit. Some guys were thrown up from nerves, and as we pivoted out, my feet went out from under me, and I went upside down." And from Jack Schlegel, "I recall that I was the last to leave the plane. The plane was going down. I moved as fast as I could to get out, and after bailing out, saw the plane go up in a ball of flame." For more incredible paratrooper accounts and stories, please visit Warfare History Network. The link is in the description. The initial airborne missions were primarily concluded by 3 a.m. on June 6th. Follow-on missions providing reinforcements, additional equipment, and medical resources occurred for the British and American airborne missions. Operation Chicago for the 101st Airborne and Detroit for the 82nd Airborne used Waco gliders to provide support to Operations Albany and Boston at 4 a.m. on D-Day. A third wave of aerial support, named Operations Keokuk and Elmira, provided support for both the 82nd and 101st Airborne in the late evening at around 9 p.m. Medical reinforcements as part of Operation Elmira occurred at 11 p.m. Operation Mallard provided support for Operation Tonga. Since there were insufficient tug aircraft available for that operation, the second wave of the 6th Airborne Division provided support at around 9 p.m. The solemn story of D-Day cannot be overstated. Allied casualty estimates are as high as 9,000, with several others missing on D-Day alone. Some 4,000 airborne and glider troops were lost of the 23,400 deployed. As a mission, Operation Overlord was a success. The battle at Normandy was crucial to the recapture of Europe, but it came at a tremendous cost. The stories and lessons learned shall be passed on for generations to serve as a reminder of the price paid for freedom. Air power was but one component of this bold and critical operation. There are some incredible resources that have extensive information about D-Day and the detailed events that occurred. We would like to thank those who have done such excellent research over the decades that helped us to compile this information for you. We have included many of these in the description and encourage you to visit their sites and view their work. To learn more about the aircraft mentioned here, please come visit us at librero.com and consider becoming a patron for access to even more interesting and exclusive content. All links mentioned in this video are included in the description. Thank you for your time and consideration, and we hope to see you again soon.